and again, show your support and interest, I hope. And we do have a lot of different things going on. I'll say this again at the end of the session, but at lunchtime, we would like people, it's not a typical sit down, run in and everybody sit down and eat type lunch. It's kind of a eat when you have the opportunity and mingle. I guess the bottom line is we don't have enough seats for everybody to sit and eat. So we do have some cruiser-like tables around different places out the tent. So buffet-style lunch when that time comes. Not right yet. I know some of you guys are looking hungry already and probably used to eating lunch about now, but when the time comes. Buffet lunch, mingle, check in with our exhibitors, and again, we'll have an hour to do that. So. And with the changes going on, there's a lot of different activities and things we tried to introduce, or the organizers have tried to introduce to the program. And I'd like you just, think about what kinds of comments you might want to provide with respect to the changes. And again, encourage you towards the end of the show or the end of the program to document those things so we can get some feedback from you. Things like, maybe we'd like Rick to be the new CEO. Those kinds of things are all options type of thing. So anyways, glad to see we got the door closed, and we will continue. A leader in the mining industry, Alistair Ross, Director of Mining, Ontario Operations, Vale Canada Limited, is known for his passion for mentorship and for helping develop true leadership potential in both individuals and organizations. Before joining Vale in 2017, he provided leadership advice and coaching to Sudbury businesses experiencing rapid growth. Alistair's mining career spans 6 countries across the globe. Alistair Ross will be talking about the role of leadership in achieving zero harm. Please welcome Alistair Ross.
Great, thanks very much, Rick. I'll just do a mic check here. What do you get when you cross a prospector with a stockbroker? A broke prospector, right? Yeah, I guess it's working. Great. I think everyone knows that zero harm is definitely a journey. I don't think we ever arrive at that place. At any particular moment, of course, zero harm is with us, and then it isn't. And so I think it's appropriate that it's definitely a journey. So what I want to share with folks today is where I'm at in my journey and how I got here, because I think it'll shape a little for you of where I want to leave you at the end. So it's not like where I'm at is the greatest place in the world, and here's the answers on how zero harm is going to occur. In fact, I'm hoping far from it. I more want to engage in how much is still available for us today to make immediate steps in the next path, the next phase of zero harm. And I don't know if it applies to age, because I do have a fair amount of that now, or wisdom, and maybe wisdom can come with age, but certainly experience is an assistance. And I don't know how many times my colleagues have told me along the way the Green Book got written in blood. There's a lot of experience in there. But I'm going to suggest experience is absolutely insufficient for zero harm. It is also essential for zero harm that we use the experience we've got. So what's that combination of experience and something that says zero harm becomes a repeating reality for us versus a fleeting one? So I guess I want to start my story about what does it feel like today for a worker, manager, safety supervisor in the workplace. I think where Jody left us before was something around being present, not in the future, not in the past, but being present. And I'm certainly going to come back to that quite a bit in my speech. But I'm going to suggest to you that when a supervisor or a worker rep starts the working day in the crew, that they're really not present. First thing they do is have a look at where did the previous shift leave us? What crap did they leave behind for us even? And we immediately go to the past for a whole bunch of stuff. So in Vale we use something called a slam. I can tell you there's nothing present about a slam. It's all from the past. And we haven't yet found a way to use something like a slam. And then a crew lineup. We've practiced crew lineups forever. There's something unusual in our job. We've got to do a JHA. JHA is definitely from the past. What procedures do we have to do? Anybody remember the Neil George or the Quebec safety system, the 5 steps, right? All from the past. And what's interesting when you're in that crew lineup at the beginning of a brand new day is you go through those steps. You actually try and remember what your drift looked like yesterday in the past. And yet if there's been any success on the previous shift, the one thing you know is your drift doesn't look like it looked yesterday. So the past is actually generally what creates our present. And the issue that Jody was pointing to is, how do I get present when there's so much around me that pulls me to the past? She even started talking about those 3 phases, but if you look at them, those 3 phases are built into us from the past. The way our brains developed over time, I can tell you, when you're immediately scared by something, there's nothing happening in the front here now. Nothing. When you're afraid, it's all back here at the amygdala. Do I punch this guy in front of me? Or is he bigger and am I running? And it's an immediate thought. It's not like, is he bigger than me? You've already recognized that person's bigger than you and you're out of there. There is just run in your thing. Or, no, I'm bigger, I can dominate. It's there immediately, and you lay the punch on that person. There's nothing about you being present. It's a very interesting thing, the brain. So, if we're dragged to the past for a really good reason called survival, and it's worked well and we're all here today, thank goodness, what is it that would allow us to overcome the powerfulness of the past such that we can be present in order to exercise leadership? Because I'm going to suggest to you, leadership from the past is not leadership. So there's this other thing too about the necessity of the past. You know, there's incredible usefulness about JHAs, slams, I mean all those safety systems. I'm not dissing them at all. I'm saying they're a very necessary part for how we're so safe today. But our level of safety today is still producing fatalities. So what's the and? Is what I want to point at. And the enormity of those safety systems that you see up there, they have a side effect that is particularly debilitating. Have you ever felt in the workplace completely overwhelmed with what it takes just to get ready to go to work? Yeah. And that feeling, I'm going to call de-energizing. So the enormity of the required safety systems, some regulatory, some company policy, the enormity of them has a generic effect to de-energize an organization. They'll feel disappointed in themselves for not maintaining the standards that they set for themselves in order to achieve that next phase of zero harm. And as soon as we're de-energizing, what happens to the ability to be present in the workplace? I got another conversation going on. Once I'm de-energized, I got this other conversation that says, somebody out there is doing something to me, and I don't like it. And in the meantime, I'm trying to do a job. So as soon as my mind's not on my job, because I've got this de-energized surrounding caused by an organization. By the way, the organization's the union, it's the company, it's the hospital, it's wherever you work. All organizations have the capacity to de-energize. So I want to talk about what is the and to this stuff that says we create energy. Here's where I got. We'll see where you go. I remember very early in my career, I was in Africa at the time, and it's very interesting. I just had one of my first job reviews, a couple of years on the job. My boss says to me, Alistair, I don't like this, I like that, but boy, you don't really care much about safety, do you? What do you mean? He says, well, look at your veldskoens. Now, if anybody is from Africa, you'll know what a veldskoen is. It's a leather shoe with a rubber sole, and it's what I used to wear in the plant. There's no safety shoes, there's no steel toes. And he says, are those acid burns on your veldskoens? I looked down and I said, yeah. He says, yeah, you don't care about safety, do you? And wow. Once the embarrassment is over, he's absolutely right. I don't care about safety. I'm 22. I'm invincible. Got the motorbike and all that stuff. No, I don't care about safety. But he got me thinking. And a few years later, I'm at Palabora. I got this visit. It's actually got nothing to do with safety. We're looking at a copper issue that we had. And Palabora had this incredible story. For those of you at all familiar with the South African mining industry, I'm in Zimbabwe at the time, not South Africa. Palabora is a Rio Tinto-owned subsidiary at that point. And they had taken on NOSA like crazy. And NOSA is the National Occupational Safety Association of South Africa. And they'd introduced management by objectives. And they'd recommended 73 standards. 73, pretty precise. That if you wrote your standard in that area, they'd give you a title for housekeeping, how to demarcate stuff, for example. If you had a standard that says, here's how I demarcate stuff, and you put behind that a rigorous system that says, does my workplace now meet that standard, i.e. an audit? NOSA reckoned that you would actually start decreasing your disabling injury rate. And in fact, they were so confident of it, here's what they said. They said, if you get 50% on an audit, and it's an external audit, it's not one where you go BS yourself. If you get 50% on an audit, I'm going to give you a star because it tells me your disabling injury rate is very likely to be 5 or less. This is on the 200,000 hour mark, not the million. So those of you who know how to multiply can put it on the million. And if you get a 60%, we'll give you 4 stars because your disabling injury rate will be 4 or less. And so on up to 90% or better on your audit, we'll give you 5 stars. And the 5 stars says your disabling injury rate will be 1 or lower. And you know what? Statistically, they were right. So by auditing your standards and ensuring you complied with them, Palabora's injury rate plummeted, and they took it on so seriously across the site. And that was an integrated site. Open pit, concentrator, smelter, refinery. Lots of people working, lots of complexity, lots of hazardous stuff. And in fact, Palabora's injury rate got so good, it got less than 0.5, that NOSA said, we're going to invent a new award in recognition of what Palabora did. We're going to give them the NOSCA, our version of the Oscars. And it was literally in the shape of a female miner, and said, Palabora, thank you very much. Congratulations for leading the industry. Here's your NOSCA. And it was a big dinner in Johannesburg. And they got that 2 years in a row. And I'll never forget that my visit to them took place in the third year. And it was about August, September. Fascinating place, Palabora. They had to chase elephants out of the pit one time. Pretty cool, writing that JHA, right? So when I arrived, I'd never seen such a demoralized management and workforce. And I'm pretty young in my career, but you felt it as you walked in. They'd had 2 fatalities already that year. 2. And they'd been clean for so long it was unbelievable. And yet the 2 fatalities hit them. The electrician on the overhead cranes in the smelter, and a mechanic in the pit got run over by a truck inside of his pickup truck. Haul truck went right over him. 2 completely separated incidents, both within about 4 months. And I remember asking myself, why did that happen? What on earth would allow such an incredibly motivated, focused, strong management team and workforce to manage their safety for so long and then get hit by 2 fatalities? They didn't have the answers, by the way. They were going through the motions when I was there. We were trying to figure out where they were. Anyway, that landed very powerfully for me because I guess it was the beginning of awakening for me, saying that management systems, whilst incredibly useful, are unlikely, and I didn't know why or how in my theories, but are unlikely to prevent fatalities. But they're incredibly likely to continue keeping your injury rate low. So I still don't know how to keep an injury rate low without great management systems. But I was on the path about great management systems do not prevent fatalities. So what is it for me then that started to wake up around, not an alternative, but an addition? I think I want to talk about what it means to be human just for a moment. There's a lot of studies. Ontology is a wonderful, wonderful area of study. It's about the being part of human. I almost ask the question, what does it mean to be a human being? And if you get all interested in that, there's this incredible number of paths you can look at and go down. And I'm reading an interesting book at the moment. Just going to look up the title here. Shadows of Forgotten Ancestors. It's written in 1993. It's an old book now. It's by a couple of authors called Carl Sagan and Anne Dren. Now, in those forgotten ancestors theory, it's actually a lot of science. There's not so much theory. There's a lot of facts found along the way. It's pretty interesting what's buried deep inside of us that makes us a human being. And I think you'll recognize this sometimes. Like the first time my boss said to me, "You're not particularly interested in safety, are you?" What immediately shows up here is, I don't like to be shown up. I don't want to be made look bad. There's a desire to look good. There's a desire to be right. And if you look deep inside us human beings, you'll recognize that in yourself. being right is often a sure way to be wrong. Think about it. You stay being right even though you're not. There's a predictable path. There's an outcome. There's an inevitable outcome. And yet it's just the heart of being a human being. So we were this wonderfully complex creature with this enormous history in our genes that's traced right back to the primeval muds, right? We got the same characteristic in the DNA stream as the amoeba. It's incredible. It's made up of the same stuff, and yet here we are. And one of the prime differences, actually, is the brain. And inside of the prime difference that the brain's allowed us to do is develop language. And so we have the language of safety, we have the language of mining, and thank God we have the language of doctors, etc. Lots of languages that help us to be very specific in advancing thoughts that come from up here. But there's this whole trick that Jody was pointing to about how do you get present when everything about us is the past? It points to those muds again. We've got the same DNA strand there. Well, for me, the next awakening occurred when I was at Phelps Dodge. I'd been asked to go run a facility in the boot heel of New Mexico. And it was fascinating. So Dad approached me, a headhunter approached me, and then met with the CEO and said, go run that place for us. And I agreed. I joined them. And I'll never forget being indocked by the president of the mining company. Took me on site, introduced me to the balance of the staff there. All my managers are going to report to me. And then in my office afterwards, he said, so Alistair, there's really only two things we need from you here. First is you've got to improve safety. I said, oh, cool, what does that mean? He says, there's a Chairman's Safety Award. And in that Chairman's Safety Award, we need you to come 11th out of 12. 11th out of 12, really? He says, yeah. He says, there's 2 smelters in the company. You're going to run one of those facilities. You've got to beat that other smelter. But we know that you can't beat the mines because smelters are just unsafer than mines. And it was the first time that I'd experienced firsthand this whole thing about mythology. So I want to talk a little bit about the meaning of mythology and leadership. Mythologies are stories we create. And if we're uncareful, we'll create them such that they limit us. And Phelps Dodge had a wonderfully limiting mythology called smelters are unsafer than mines. It was unbelievable. So I'll never forget, once he had left my office, I called my management team and says, okay, we're winning the Chairman's Safety Award next year. Screw 11th. I don't understand 11th. What have we got to do to be number one? Now, the shock on my team, who were long-term Phelps Dodge folks, pretty big. But it was amazing. I think Jody talked about persistence a little earlier. It was amazing. No matter how hard they try to beat me down, no matter how long that kid was saying, I want a cookie. No, number one, it's the only place we're going to go. Within 3 months, my whole management team was figuring out, well, what do we got to do? It's an interesting question now. The mythology had gone. They're now in the game. So, I think I joined them in July or August. Somewhere around September, October, the chairman came along of the company. And he used to visit every operation across the globe. 3 to 4 years was his routine. And we just happened to be next up in the slot, but there was a stranger, this non-Phelps Dodge dude, running one of his properties. And he was a little leery about it. But the CEO had said, given me the nod, so he was okay, I guess. Anyway, we'd put a big family picnic on. So there's about 1,000 people running around the park. We owned the town, we owned the bowling alley, we owned the bank. It's pretty good business, really. So in addition to being the president of the company, I was also the mayor. And one cool thing about the mayor is you appoint the sheriff. So drinking and driving is not an issue anymore, right? Anyway, in the park, we've got the big picnic going on because the chairman's visiting us. And everybody's running around with a pin on their T-shirt. Beautiful summer's day in New Mexico. And the chairman, who didn't have his glasses on, he sees this pin. He says, "What is that pin about?" I said, "Doug, don't worry. You're going to get one when you have your little speech at the end." And Doug got up to give his speech at the end. And we got a kid from one of the families come up. "Here you are, Mr. Yaley. Here's your pin." And the pin was this. So we've been there 3 months. Now we've got the crew pretty much going. We're going to win that Chairman's Safety Award. So what happened? Well, the first thing that happened is the chairman pulled me aside. That's a dangerous game. One is you can't do it, but two, you're going to break everybody's hearts because now you're leading them to a place that's impossible to achieve. Then what do you do? I said, "Doug, I'm going to invite you back next year to give us the Chairman's Safety Award is what I'm going to do. You care, I do what you want to do." A year later, we invited him back to give us the Chairman's Safety Award. We won it the next year. How the hell did we do that? Giving you the first clue is we gave up the mythology that we couldn't compete with the mines. But there's some other interesting things we did along the way. It started to get me thinking about, wait a moment. If we can go from, we were 12th the year I arrived, if we can go from 12th to 1st, and we didn't change one management system, because they were pretty damn good. Phelps Dodge is actually a very, very safe mining company. What did we do to launch ourselves to be first in Phelps Dodge? It was pretty interesting. We actually started to figure on this energy thing. We noticed that even though we were a non-union organization, we ran ourselves as if we were unionized. And those of you, especially in the union, will know the history of Phelps Dodge and unions. It's a very, very bitter history. That bitter history lived in the workforce as if the union was still there. And in fact, if you looked at our employee guidebook, it was as if it had just come right out of the CBA. The union was actually still present. They just weren't getting their dues. It's a little secret for the steelworkers in the room. It's ripe for the picking. Go get them. But it ran the mentality of everybody is that I'm going to treat my workforce as if it was unionized. It was bizarre. But we had the disadvantage of we didn't have any union reps. So how the hell do you talk to your workforce? First thing we did is start talking to the workforce. Second thing is we gave the management courage. And we allowed them to start becoming present to what was actually going on around them. So when they could see that they had this history that was actually limiting them, but the history was their story, there's no truth to it, it's just a story. We started to liberate them. Then we came up with every manager will have to run an energizing conversation for a month of the year. It just so happened we had 11 managers. One was a contractor manager, so we roped him in too. And then I was the 12th, so I took December. And it was our job as that leader to energize. Now, what do I mean by energize? I want to talk about near misses for a moment. So I know there's a lot of talk about near misses. And I don't want to make right or wrong, but I just want to talk to you about what a near miss was for us at that moment. A near miss was something that didn't actually happen. Okay? I know near misses now have more commonly got to something happened, but at least no one got significantly hurt or didn't get hurt or whatever. That's a different one. That's okay. Keep it there. Here's what I'm talking about. Something didn't actually happen. What does that mean? I want you to think about the the guy getting off the scoop or the jumbo or whatever, dismounting down a ladder, and he's about to miss the bottom rung. How many of you have had injuries from your operators missing that last rung and just catching that chunk? From broken ankles to just slight strains. We don't know what the outcome's going to be. It's just luck at that moment. Not a death factor, we know that. But the broken ankle from dismounting from a scoop is one of the most debilitating things I know of. So here's what we called a near miss was, I'm about to miss the last rung because I wasn't present, and then I became present. And I said, you know what, I'm going to take the last rung. That's a near miss. And if you can get those reported, as we started to do at Hidalgo, it's amazing what starts to show up. Because you can only notice them if you're present. If you're in the past, if you're arguing with the wife as you're dismounting the scoop, I can promise you, you're going to miss that last rung if it's part of your habit. So our job as leaders was to have our folks be present in the workplace. And at the moment, I can tell you, as leaders, don't do a very good job at that. In fact, next part of the theory here, I'm going to tell you that my model is that every human being has capacity for leadership. Every human being. The problem is the organizations, as we've designed them, are designed to prevent that leadership capacity from developing. Because we've managed the crap out of them. There's no room for leadership development. So, I haven't got my 5 minutes yet. I must be okay. I'm going to suggest to you that the near misses is one way. It's not a great way. It's just a way that sort of worked good enough, and there must be better ways. So looking out there to folks like you is, what are other ways to measure if someone's actually present in the workplace? So I can tell now if I'm starting to lose the audience. They're not looking at me, they're looking at their phones, they're doing whatever they do, and I know you're not present at this point. It's fine. It's fine. You're not stepping off the scoop about to break your ankle. It's okay, go to sleep. But being present as a leader is something you got to develop. So if I was concerned that I was missing one person here today, I'd do what Jody was doing. She didn't let you go to sleep, right? She was determined to leave her message with you. As leaders, start taking that determination into the workplace. If you're about to leave a critical safety message with the crew before they go underground, you can read it off because it came from the boss. This is somebody else's. In 2016, the mining industry saw. You can read it like that. Check the box and move on. Or you can say, hey guys, did you hear? What did anybody hear about it? You start a conversation and you look in the eyes. Are they present or not? Did they hear it? If you're not doing that as a leader, and I'm not talking about a manager, I really want to understand. Everybody has capacity for leadership in my model. I've met a lot of leadership gurus that say, oh, no, leadership is an inherent character within certain people, genes, blah, blah, blah. Bullshit. Complete BS. Why? Because I've seen leadership spring up from the weirdest places at the weirdest times just when I needed it. From the last person I expected in my team, in the team that I lead, someone will suddenly stand up. And he or she will say something, and it'll stop the whole room. Wow. And I might not hear from them again for 2 years. It doesn't matter. When we needed that person most, they stood up. So, I say that at Elgo, the only reason we went from last to first is we had people be present in the workplace and just use all the existing systems. That's all we did. And here's how it went. During the course of the month, we'd figured out, because we'd had the stats over time, that if we got 5 near misses reported, 1 near miss reported for every 5 people, wrong way around. 1 near miss reported for every 5 people. That gave us a rate of so many per week. And if we had that many, we knew the workforce was present because we were getting these reported back to us. And when it dropped below that ratio, we kicked the manager who was in charge of energizing the conversation for the whole site into action. And I'll never forget the one time. It was April. Why April? Because it's tax season. Why tax season? Because our CFO said, I want tax season. Everybody's de-energized during tax season. I'm going to energize them. So he picked it right at the beginning of the year. And what happened in April, the second week of April, our near misses dropped. Some people would say, yay. And we all went, oh. We're falling asleep. CFO got up, left the room. Didn't even stay for the rest of the meeting. He was on call out. He called all his people together and said, holy smokes, there's an injury coming. What are we going to do to energize it? They didn't have a book. Let's pull up the procedure to energize people. No such thing. They invented it on the spot because they were already energized by this call. We were relying on them, and they were not going to let us down. The accounting group was going to lead this particular safety conversation. The next morning, I never forget showing up to the gate. Yelena, she'd got a basketball scholarship to New Mexico University from Russia. She was 6'8". And this gentle soul. But you looked up to her, right? Especially when you're my height. And Yelena said to me, Alistair, good morning, good to see you. Every day is a payday, and she handed me a payday candy bar. Every day is a payday when you go home safe. Thank you for getting here safe, and I hope to give you one when you go home this evening. They did that to every member of the workforce, and that's all they did. But the buzz by lunchtime, when they're saying, we have accountants working for us? Who's that tall girl? Yeah. It was incredible, the conversation that happened in the plant. And there was energy back again. There's no playbook for energy. But there's got to be a playbook to say it's now required. And I'm going to suggest to you, most of your workplaces now require it. So you've got to put a system in place that says, let's go get energized. And don't go to the playbook. Invent it on the spot. Have different crews do it. You should have seen I don't have enough time to go through all of it, but everybody was called to action, and they all came up with completely different energizers. So, where's this leading me? I want to leave you with a model. I can't do it in 2 minutes. I want to leave you with a model. And the model is one for leadership. And it keys right off the same stuff Jody was saying. I'm going to say to you, I'm going to give it to you because there's a bunch of engineers in the room as an equation, because you love equations. So the model is being a leader equals. Is it coming up? Yeah, cool. Being present. If you're not present, you ain't being a leader. Probably a darn good manager, though. So that's okay. It's just insufficient. Here's the and. And the next and is, plus being in the presence of some pretty darn big commitments. And I want to here check commitment against zero harm. Because there's not many bigger commitments. Jody poked fun of those who were long time in marriage. My wife and I, we've survived where's Michelle? We've survived a few years, right? there's commitments, and then there's commitments. And I want to talk about breakfast. I'd have heard this one. Those of you who were lucky enough to have the big English breakfast today probably had bacon and eggs. I'm going to tell you the chicken was committed to your meal. The chicken was involved with your meal. The pig was committed. Are you committed at that level? These commitments, zero harm, if it's a commitment like you are pig to bacon, are huge for the next part. You've got to be present first. You've got to be committed to something in your life, because otherwise there'll be no call. And then there's the final thing, and it's about having the courage to have the appropriate conversations at the appropriate time. I'm going to suggest to you that's a leader. And absent any one of those, it's going to be insufficient. So it starts to look a bit like this. If each of us has capacity for leadership, and the organization we're in generically declines to develop it, and yet you desire it anyway, what's going to help is, one, you being present to that fact. Two, looking, what am I committed to in this moment? And safety is such an easy one. You know it can get anybody's attention rapidly. There's much harder games to play than safety, in my opinion. And then the third thing is, open your mouth. Don't be the one in the back of the room with something to deliver and then hold back. Because the road to zero harm is not going to be led by the union. It's not going to be led by management. It's not going to be led by the company. There is no such thing. The company. I'll look it up. It's a number of shares and stuff like that. No, it's us. And when we don't speak up, we're the one leaving the hazardous situation, not only for ourselves, but our co-worker. So, I'll stop there now because I'm way past my 2 minutes. And I'd like to have a little conversation right here. Did you learn anything today? Because I didn't come here, although I got paid a hell of a lot of money, and I got a bonus for if it's one question. So I need one question, I'll get extra money for that. I didn't come here to say maybe something can be different. I came here to pour my heart out. This is where I'm at on my road to safety. I'm committed to zero harm. It's the only reason I got up here today. Where are you on your road to zero harm? What's your model look like? Because I can promise you, if I hear one more suggestion that says, here's how we prevent fatalities as another management system, I think I'll buckle. Because we're not getting to the leadership aspect fast enough. You want the big gains, go for the leadership. Yes, we will improve our management systems. Got that. That ain't the answer. So, come on, somebody talk. Fergus, where's Fergus? He normally got something to say. Is he hiding? Yeah. Anything?
As you know, the global industry is preoccupied with elimination of fatalities, from ICMM.
Yeah.
Bringing in critical risk management, these management systems in major corporations such as the one you work for. I'm curious, as you're seeing, suggesting that that's not going to be a valuable exercise.
Yeah, so let's be cautious about valuable. So what Fergus was saying is that as ICMM and the whole industry is going to how the next phase of fatality elimination is going to go. It's about in the risk management area. I think it's clear that there's work to be done there. I'm just going to suggest that even with the best of the management systems around risk management, I'll predict fatality in our industry from existing known risks. And it's because we're made up of mistakes. Our DNA core is full of mistakes. Look at it. In fact, something like 90% of our DNA is garbage. It's mismatched stuff that doesn't do anything. We make mistakes. So if we make mistakes, how on earth do I prevent a mistake at work from becoming a fatality? That's what we're up against. And I'm suggesting the biggest advantage I know of, this is personal now, it's not ICMM, it's not Vale, it's me. Because I don't want to be at that gravesite, sharing with the spouse and the family what might have been. And if I'm going to make that bet that keeps me away from the gravesite, it is not dramatic improvements in the management system. It's the fact that we've dumbed down the ability for everybody to be a leader. And in that dumbing down, we have people become not present to their work. So what is it that has us as leaders, every single one of us, help someone be present in the workplace? That's what we owe. And by the way, notice that yourself will not be present. And if you haven't got someone around you saying, hey, get present, you're the next statistic. It's a team thing, man. It's that phase 3 Jody was talking about. But how do you actually get there? That's the road I'm on. I don't know if that helps, Fergus. Yeah.
It's a good message. I think it sounds like you're suggesting that to go the right path to zero harm, we got to create more leaders versus dumb them down, dumb people down. Look for leaders
Yeah.
to support that. That's a great message. My second question, or my question, so looking at the triangle, we've always calculated and graded ourselves on the triangle and everything like that. Now, what you're suggesting is, when you look at that in the view of fatalities, we really can't really correlate the two, or are we still looking at maybe?
No, wonderful question. I'm going to suggest to you that the premise of the triangle does not point to fatalities. The premise of the triangle worked great, and we built everything up to reduce our DIs or allies or whatever you want to call them, right? And I'm going to say to you, in fact, there's a wonderful program at Vale right now. It's a great management program. We're not running away from them, called High Potential Incidents, that says it doesn't matter what you do to the base. There are some incidents left that always have the potential of fatality. Always. Now, if I reduce the base, my allies and DIs come down. We used to think it translated, I get it small enough, no fatalities. I think there's enough evidence now, enough companies have shrunk the base and do a Palabora and get the fatalities that says the model's not quite right. It's a pretty good one, and as we got better, it's insufficient. So what we're adding is, how do I get on top of my HPIs such that the fatality doesn't occur? When we got the real answer, we'll be back. It'll be a great paper, and we're learning our way on that one. Thanks. Awesome question. Yeah.
So that equation that you showed up there was brilliant. It sounds like that's your personal philosophy. I guess my question is, how widespread do you think that is with the industry? That type of thinking.
I'm saying it's largely absent. And I'm saying it's largely absent in the most precarious of places, such as the CEO level, the C-suite. I'm saying that doesn't exist in the C-suite. generically. And I'm saying it's starting to show up in lower down places in society, some in the mining, some in that. But
What do you think accounts for that absence?
well, so the C-suite. What do you think is the number one requirement to be a member of the C-suite? Ego. Think about it. It's a huge drive. In fact, I'm going to suggest, don't know that this is true, I'm going to suggest you may not be a great CEO unless you've got some form of ego attached. Because you're going to get a lot of knocks along the way. And if you've got a fragile ego, you ain't sticking in the game. The problem that comes with it, so it's like a strong suit. And a strong suit has a good point to it, but there's a cost, a hidden cost behind it. The hidden cost behind it is, how do you teach someone with an ego that they're wrong about something? So typically at the top of companies, you're going to find very egotistical people, potentially necessary and potentially costly, because where they are flawed, there's no willingness to learn. So this is it's a growing model of leadership, not quite like that. It's adapted for me personally. It's the way I share and coach now. But I try to operate against that. And I noticed when I fail mostly is when I forgot my commitment, or I got scared and I shut up at the wrong time. Or I was human and I just wasn't present. And I didn't have someone around me at that moment get me back being present. In the past, I'm going to be right, I'm going to defend myself, all that stuff. When I'm present, I'm going, holy smokes, you're right. What a stupid thing I just said. Let's take a back start again. That's being a leader right there in the moment. Tough model, but works for me. Yeah?
So you're pretty strong message you have on leadership. And like as we say that zero harm is a journey. So leadership as a human being is a journey as well. And my question is like soft skills. So you have any tools or measure you use in the past to measure the soft skills, considering leadership as one of them, and so that you have from where you are going to where because zero harm we can measure based on injuries. But how you measure the leadership?
Yeah, very good. So here's what I find is fascinating to me. In a well-managed company, here's how a meeting will go. It's 10 o'clock. Start, item on the agenda, item on the agenda, item on the agenda. 10:30, finish, gone. Well-run company. I'm sure all the urgent stuff got managed. Here's my bet. None of the important stuff got covered. So here's what I look for when I go into organizations. Who's talking about the future? And the interesting thing about the future is the only place the future can exist is in a conversation. You look where the past exists. I'll show you every library in the world. There's the past. It's written down for us. And with the internet now, oh my God, is it written down. My sister was at this grocery store yesterday. Yay. We got a lot of history now. We don't hold the future conversations in existence very well because they get crowded out by the urgent. Am I going to make my costs this month? Or, even more depressing, why didn't I do my costs last month? Like we anchor ourselves back in that past amazingly well. So the future piece is I listen for it in the organization. Is anybody talking about the future, and how does it show up in the present? So the present is fleeting like this, right? It just, as soon as I say present, it's past, and I'm about to be past here too. But the soft skills is, what are the conversations going on in the organization? And you'll find if they're about the future, your soft skills stuff will start to get in there.
Alistair, will you be around for a little bit?
Yes.
So for those who are looking to have ask more questions, get some more of your insight, you'll be available around the lunchtime?
I'm getting surrounded here.
Okay. Thank you very much. Rick, I'll turn it to you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rick.
On behalf of everyone here
Thanks, man.
and our sponsors, we thank you for the very rich conversation. And unfortunately, we don't have more time for it. Maybe another time, though.
Okay, thanks a lot, guys.
And thanks for staying around.
Thank you.
Before I invite the innovative panel to come forward, I have another surprise for you. Maybe remember Lisa Lounsbury and staying on the Energize theme. She's been here 3 years, contributed the past 3 years, and she's bringing it again, folks. So I welcome Lisa to come.